Melissa Jensen, who's our advocacy manager. But
Hell yeah. Nice to meet you. I'm going to be moderating.
Awesome.
You got the
yes, I got the.
and then I'm going to have really one question.
Chick, chick.
Testing.
Testing. There we go.
Testing.
As we prepare to get started, let me ask again for folks to move closer to the front, and if you're on these side sections, please come to the two middle sections. That'll be helpful for us as we work together this afternoon. Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome to this Cornerstones Faith Council and Advocacy Forum. Here at Cornerstones, we know that stability, access to affordable homes, healthy and resilient neighborhoods, and thriving children, youth, and families are the foundation for human dignity and hope. I'm Stephen Smith-Cobbs, pastor at Trinity Presbyterian Church, member of the board of directors at Cornerstones, and they tell me I'm vice president of the Faith Council. Here at Cornerstones, we also recognize in the midst of all of those challenges, many crises are converging across our region. Rising housing costs, food insecurity, mental health challenges, growing inequities that test the resilience of our neighbors and of our systems. The goal of this forum today is to center our neighbors who are most acutely affected by these challenges, to name these challenges honestly, simplify what can feel like overwhelmingly complex challenges as much as possible, and empower, most importantly, empower faith communities, partners, and advocates to take action, individually as groups and organizations, and together, working together as well. All together, we begin transforming concern into collective strength and action, amplifying community voices, creating practical tools, and building the capacity to advocate for the change our neighbors very much need. The role of the Cornerstones Faith Council is not to have meetings for the sake of scheduling meetings. I've got enough of those. You probably do too. Instead, our role is, as needed, to bring people together so that each of you, faith leaders, advocates, service providers, and community members, can better do your work and strengthen your impact. We want to listen, to learn what's working, what's not working, to discover new ways in which we can work together, and to understand what you need to serve and to lead more effectively. Our space today, graciously provided by Flores United Methodist Church, is a shared space for respectful reflection and active collaboration. Over the next 90 minutes or so, we will listen to lived experience, engage with experts, contribute to discussion circles, and report back clear takeaways. Today, we aim to produce community-validated priorities, a resource guide you can use immediately, and next steps, including a forum summary that will come to you in 1 week, toolkits coming in 2 weeks, and a reconvening in January ahead of the General Assembly. Ultimately, our collective voice and our shared hope will drive the stability and justice that every family in Northern Virginia deserves. We are honored to have some Virginia elected officials with us this day, and I want to ask if you are an elected official or a representative of one serving on that official staff, would you please stand so we can thank you for your presence? We thank you for being here, for your partnership, and for the work you do every day to make hope real in our communities. It's not easy these days to be an elected official. By the time we're done today, you're going to leave with a one-page resource guide. You'll have a reminder to fill out a survey Google Doc with resources to share and give your evaluation of our time together. By November 24th, Cornerstones will circulate key takeaways by email. By January 12th, Cornerstone will distribute practical resources and toolkit commitments to reconvening this very network and more who could not be with us today, leading into the General Assembly in January 2026. We hope to be part of the gathering with the Legislative Committee and Board of Supervisors at Fairfax County in the month of January. And many of us, and you are invited to join, are going to the Day for All People on January 21st in Richmond. The next reconvening, regular session of the General Assembly will be happening, and we want to be part of it and to make an impact on it. Now, before we begin, and I want to shout out to my friend and colleague, Kay Scarry, who reminded us that if we do what we want to do, we need to listen before we do anything else. There are those of us here from many faith traditions, besides my own of being a Presbyterian Christian. But I have a sense and a feeling that all of us, whether we have a faith tradition or no faith tradition, we know what it is to live and to be in a kind of prayer, a stance of prayer, a prayer of longing. So for what will pass for an invocation, we are blessed to have the beautiful voice of Shannon Wise, who will sing for us a song written more than 100 years ago by Stephen Foster, written unbelievably, I think, for times even like these. Hard times, come again no more. A prayer for us all. Shannon?
life's pleasures and count its many tears, while we all sob sorrow with the poor. There's a song that will linger forever in our ears. Oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis the song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. While we seek mirth and beauty and music light and gay, there are frail forms fainting at the door. Though their voices are silent, their pleading looks will say, oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis the song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. There's a pale, drooping maiden who toils life away, with a worn heart whose better days are o'er. Though her voice would be merry, 'tis sighing all the day. Oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis the song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again Tis a sigh that is wafted across the troubled wave. 'Tis a wail that is heard upon the shore. 'Tis a dirge that is murmured around the lowly grave. Hard times come again no more. 'Tis the song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come
Thank you, Shannon. That was a beautiful rendition and a lovely way to start out our discussions today. Good afternoon. My name's Andy Latcher. Andy Latcher. I'm the chair of the board of directors of Cornerstones, and I want to thank you all for coming here today to spend some time with us. Today is about talking to each other about how we can work more effectively together to address the problems and the challenges in our community. We wanted to start today by centering around the voices of those with lived experiences. We're not going to see their faces, but we are here to listen to their words as they share with us what they're experiencing so we can learn and act together. Before we can talk, we need to listen. Go ahead.
Hi, I am resident leader of Herdon. Especially right now with the time we live in, families feel very insecure. What is going to happen next time when I get home? Maybe I'm not going to see my children, so my children are not going to see me. Or the students feel like I get home, mama or my dad is not going to be there to feed me. So we have to come together and think about all of us what we're going through.
Hello. We are a family of 4, so we have struggling on affordable childcare and Medicaid. We are working hard to do truck payment and car payments and credits. So the rest of it, we use it for rent and food for our kids and support clothes. So we struggle. We need help on Medicaid and childcare, so I can work and I can support my family too. And I'm happy to support my family and the community as well.
Yeah, I'm one of the community ambassador, mother of 3 college students. Balance between income and the bills and expenses. It is very stressful to budget in this economy as we lost income due to company lost contract and went out of business. We are struggling also from the education balance and housing accumulation of the applications that led to credit loss. And we are here for 26 years. We never, miss up one of our bills. But with this economy, we did actually. It is very stressful.
One of the challenges that we face right now as a community is the rapid increase of the cost of groceries, all the utilities that we use, and also when they need to provide suitable clothes for the kids and with the right price. Also, some families here has challenges paying their rent because everything now is increased, and they might have stable job, but the salaries or the pay per hour did not increase.
I don't know anyone who had a great need, but maybe it's because we don't show it out of shame, because we don't have the courage, because right now I think that all people are afraid even to go out to the store, even to leave their children at the bus stop because of the immigration situation. A lot of the parents don't have papers. In my case, that's why they took my job away from me, because they realized my papers weren't in order. Thank God it didn't get any worse, and I decided to leave before it became something bigger, before I was no longer here. But as I say, God goes before us, and there are good people along the way who help us. There are also many people who take advantage of the aid that is given away. And perhaps it's very unfair because they take from the one who need it. There are many people who are afraid to speak out and give their opinion.
The way this has affected me personally, getting the food stamps 1 week at a time, I'm glad to get it, but it keeps you going back to the store, therefore you're using more gas. So I usually make 1 trip to the store when it was coming monthly, and I just feel for those who have to catch the bus. Another suggestion is food banks can use trucks and go into areas, the middle and lower income, because it's not just the lower income suffering, it's also the middle income is feeling it. They can give out gas cards, so people that are going to work but getting no pay, i.e. air traffic controllers, gift cards so people can buy personal items. Now, with food stamps, you cannot get personal items. One of the drawbacks of food stamps, they should give you a portion for personal items. I have a friend that's been working for the government for over 35 years. She has no pay. She was telling me she has 3 grandchildren, a sick husband, and she's worried about, I don't know how I'm going to pay my rent. I don't know how I'm going to get the food.
We started by listening to those who are living with challenges today. Next, we're going to hear from some experts. We have experts in 5 different areas that were listed in your program that we're going to be addressing today: immigration and deportation, food insecurity, affordable housing, homelessness, and education. These problem areas are not silos. They are all interrelated. We're going to hear from 5 different experts. The 5 different experts are also going to be participating in our discussion circles later this afternoon. So first, turning to the topic of immigration and deportation, I'm honored to introduce Lorena Brady. She's the Community and Human Rights Advocate and Program Manager at the International Mayan League.
Thank you so much, and it's such a pleasure to be here with you all today. So, when I received this invitation, I really thought hard about how do I ensure that I uplift community voices, and I'm so grateful for the video that was just shared, because I think it really highlights that in these times, to be brown, indigenous, Black, Asian, Arab, literally, if you're not white passing, it feels like you have a target on your back. Currently, no one is safe from racial profiling, from violence and discrimination at the hands of masked federal agents roaming our streets. In some instances, they're collaborating with local law enforcement, like we have in Loudoun County. So the threats are very real, and our communities are constantly living in fear, and we're not criminals. What we're experiencing right now can best be described as collective long-term trauma. And it's important to note that half of Northern Virginia's youth live in immigrant households. That means that half of our youth right now are literally being traumatized and experiencing high levels of trauma because of the threats that are happening. And in my opinion, the question is not if immigration enforcement is going to show up in our neighborhoods, it's just a matter of time. And I really wonder if we're adequately prepared. And, can I just go into some of the challenges that we're facing?
Good.
Awesome. So really, I want to focus on families and the impacts on our children. Family separation is very real in our community. And even though Fairfax County has the trust policy, many of our families leave the county for work or for other activities. And so what we're seeing is that there really is no rule of law. There is no due process if you're detained. U.S. citizens are being detained. Those with legal work authorization are being detained. Those that are, seeking the legal avenues that are available to us, going to immigration court, they're being detained. So literally, there is no guarantee for our safety right now. And, part of the work that we do at the International Mayan League is to work closely with displaced indigenous peoples that call this region home. So I think it's also important to understand that many of our neighbors and our community members already come from heavily from conflict areas. And so when you start seeing militarized police in Washington, D.C., or just last Thursday, 4 families in Herndon were impacted by checkpoints on Clara Barton Parkway. So they were returning home from work, they were stopped at a checkpoint, and a family member was detained. So then that means that, children, their worst fears are coming true, that their parent is actually being taken away. Women are being disproportionately impacted because now they're becoming the sole providers for their families as they also try to navigate the legal system. There's depleted legal resources available, and that's been the case since the beginning of this year. Basically, in the region, pro bono legal support for immigration is not available anymore. There's low bono avenues that our families can pursue, but even then, $150 to $200 for a legal consult is still unattainable for many of our community members. I think it's also, just the other day, we were talking with a mom at Herndon Elementary. Her husband was detained a few weeks ago, and now he's already back in Honduras. So again, you see that even though we might not be seeing what's happening in Chicago or what is occurring in Charlotte, family separation is very real. I also want to highlight that Fairfax County has historically been one of the top receiving jurisdictions for unaccompanied minors. So children that are fleeing extreme violence and insecurity in their home countries flee north, seeking safety. And by law, the United States government is required to take them in and protect them. And in turn, what we've seen in the last few months is that actually what they're trying to do is target these children by, over Labor Day weekend, they tried to illegally deport 76 children back to Guatemala, claiming that their parents wanted them back. That's not true. And out of the children that had been identified that are currently in the custody of the U.S. government, the Office of Refugee and Resettlement, 609 children were on a short list to be returned to Guatemala. 90% of those children are indigenous, which in turn confirms that the kids that are seeking safety in our communities come from extreme poverty, but also consequences of genocide and war in their communities that still impact them today. Fairfax County used to receive between 800 to 900 unaccompanied minors per fiscal year. Currently, the numbers have dropped to around 2 being released in July. And what's really concerning is that now the children that have come over the last year are being held in detention centers, so in jail, for more than 6 months. So we can only imagine the mental health impacts that that's having and on their spiritual health that that is having on children. So I think, you know, when we really try to understand what's happening in the immigration space, when kids are being targeted, when there's, you know, a call out from DHS to establish a call center so that we can start calling in and saying, hey, there's a kid that's probably, you know, illegal. And what they're trying to do is to get more local law enforcement to sign 287G agreements to then go after children in our communities. So that's the severity of what's occurring. So, you know, I could go on and on about all the different challenges that we're up against, but I'll hand it off to a colleague. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, considering another complex issue, food insecurity. We have Kelly Andrier, who's the director of the Virginia region for the Capital Area Food Bank. Melissa? Oh, excuse me, Kelly?
It's okay. I'm filling in for Melissa, so that's why. So I'm Kelly from the Capital Area Food Bank. So every year, for the past 5 years, I should say, the Capital Area Food Bank puts out a hunger report, and that is a point-in-time look that we look at food insecurity in this capital region, and it's a really important point and is showing us a lot of trends. Food insecurity doesn't happen in a vacuum. It was interesting. I mean, it's really important to center the voices of folks with lived experience, but you heard over and over again in the testimonials we heard before we started about the impacts of food insecurity. But I am willing to bet that food insecurity isn't the main issue. That is just the symptom of what's happening. What we are seeing in our region is prolonged, sustained, increased food insecurity. So this year, we are seeing that 36% of households in the DMV region are experiencing food insecurity. That's flat from last year, but that's up from 32% in 2023. So it's a significant increase. In Northern Virginia specifically, we are at 30% in Northern Virginia. The other really troubling part of those trends is that very low food insecurity, because the USDA measures food insecurity on a continuum through a series of questions that we administer through our survey. That's up to 22%, and it's rising. So that really low food insecurity is growing. This is, as I mentioned, we look at all the factors that influence that, so in terms of an economic impacts. And one of the main reasons that this is occurring and growing is because wage growth is lagging behind inflation. And so our CPI over the past 5 years has grown 21%, whereas wages have only grown 6% in the region. So that means we're getting poorer collectively always with that inflation. And so those real wages are declining. And that is leading to food insecurity. The other big recent development that is very much to our region is the impact of the change in administration and the federal workforce. Those that have been impacted by, when we did our study, which technically took place in May, and we released our report in September, the impacts of food insecurity for those households, federal workers, and contractors was at 41% were experiencing food insecurity, and that was in May. So you can only imagine what's happened in the time since then. As a result, people, because we have lower wage growth, inflation, people are making trade-offs. So they're choosing between eating and other things. The most common thing 74% of our respondents said they're choosing between food and transportation. Credit card debt for 64%, and we are seeing default rates in our community skyrocket, increase over 50% depending upon the county. Rent and mortgage for 58%, and medical care and utilities for 56%. These are the choices that our families are making between that and food. And one of the things that I find really interesting is that Virginia actually has the lowest share of people accessing the charitable food system within the region, Northern Virginia. So people are clearly hurting, but they're still not accessing the charitable food system. And so we have to look, the main reasons that are reported for that are awareness, stigma, and convenience. So thinking about how we are showing up in providing food access to folks is just essential as we move forward to support the community around us.
Thank you, Kelly. And sorry for calling you Melissa.
It's okay.
Our next complex interrelated challenge is in the area of affordable housing. And today I'm honored to be able to introduce Jill Norcross, who's the Executive Director of the Northern Virginia Housing Alliance, or NVAHA. Jill?
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Again, my name is Jill Norcross, and I'm with NVAHA. I'm a proud Cornerstones Board alum, and my colleague Amanda Corin is here. She's our Loudoun director. She's a proud Cornerstone staff alum, so we have a lot of respect for the organization and for your convening and advocacy and bringing faith communities together. So thank you for that, and thank you for centering us all in beautiful song and also with the voices of those who have lived experience. So I do appreciate that. So our organization really focuses on increasing the supply of and equitable access to affordable housing in Northern Virginia, and we do that through education and advocacy and community partnership. And I always like to underline the community partnership because we don't do this without working with all of you in community, but these forums where we're really discussing complicated, complex problems in different sectors is really key to that partnership. So thank you to my colleagues here who are up here sharing the same stories, right? Same stories of fear in the community, same stories of affordability of living and lack of affordability in living, and of course housing is is right along with that. So we are currently have a housing supply shortage here in our region and across the country. We haven't done a very good job building housing since the market crash of 2008. We haven't kept up with the supply, and that's put our region here about 320,000 units short of housing, and thanks to partners at Urban Institute and the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, we've been able to identify that 75% of the housing we need should be affordable to those making making low and moderate incomes. So when we talk about low and moderate incomes, we know we have a very high area median income in this region. I think it's now almost $165,000 for a family of 4. And the rents, again, are not matching the wages. We've heard that. So we really do try to activate around, creating more housing and preserving the housing that we have. And I do want to recognize that we are making progress to those goals. Fairfax County has set a goal of 10,000 new affordable units by 2030. We're marching toward that. It's not easy. Our local counties, especially Fairfax and Loudoun, have committed considerable resources through housing trust funds using local tax dollars to contribute to that. So our local governments are really investors in the housing that we're building. This is all through loans and not grants, so it'll be paid back, in effect. But the reality of all this amazing improved housing policy and resources is the fact that we get calls like everybody else here up on the stage with me, and all of you do too if you're in your faith communities, have any sort of human service or social justice activity and nonprofits, and people can't pay the rent. And that's the heartbreaking work that Amanda and I are doing. We see every day we have an immigration and affordable housing task force that we stood up because we wanted to make sure our affordable housing owners and developers understood their rights and the rights of their residents to be protected in their own homes from deportation. But it's really complicated. We've seen changes where people are actually not being deported out of their homes as much as like on the roads or traveling to and from work, so that's a challenge. We're working with Leesburg Mobile Park residents who are currently being displaced from their community, so this is like 75 households right in Leesburg who will lose their housing and lose the investments they made in their own mobile home community, and that's a very high population of immigrants, so on top of fear of having to be deported when you don't have your home anymore. And we're seeing a lot of those residents having to move further and further away, Winchester, West Virginia, because we don't have that affordable housing supply that's nearby for them to remain in the community. So it is heartbreaking work. And then we're, of course, seeing the federal impacts of the federal cutbacks that we've talked about. Recently, HUD, when the government reopened, and Sean could talk about this, we've been expecting this, but they announced their continuum of care funding, so that's funding that supports homeless and chronically homeless, and our most effective way to address homelessness in our community is through permanent supportive housing. And we learned that through the next round of funding that the cuts to PSH, or permanent supportive housing, that's for the most difficult to house individuals who need those wraparound services, will affect people in Virginia. Up to 3,200 people who are housed currently could lose their housing. So that's not like we're not going to house people, 3,200 people in the future. That's people who we have worked so hard to house now, who are stable, that might lose access to funding and be able, would have to leave the housing that they have. So I could go on, but I'll yield my time. So thank you.
Well, Jill, it's an excellent segue into the topic of homelessness in general. Homelessness and affordable housing are certainly tightly linked, as Jill just alluded to, but maybe we can talk a little bit more about some of the additional challenges of homelessness in our area. Today we have Sean Reed, who's the Director of Homeless Services in the Office to Prevent and End Homelessness in the Fairfax County Department of Housing and Community Development. Sean.
Sure, thanks, Andy. So I'll just say right off the bat, the solution to homelessness is exactly what Jill works on in affordable housing. Dr. Greg Colburn, who has wrote an amazing book called Housing Ends, like the issue about how to end homelessness is to get more housing, because that is what you need, and we have this shortage there. So for me at the Department of Housing and Community Development's Office to Prevent and End Homelessness, I'm responsible for working with a team that works with a variety of community partners and nonprofit organizations that are doing the direct service of working to help prevent homelessness, but also engaging with individuals who are experiencing an active episode of homelessness within Fairfax County. So our office, we support services such as homelessness prevention programs, street outreach, emergency shelter. That also includes some collaborations with the county's health department. We work with the Department of Public Works in a program called Operation Stream Shield, which provides active on-the-job learning opportunities through that department. We also work through programs called Rapid Rehousing and, of course, Permanent Supportive Housing. These are just some of the various programs that are used that have been found over the last several decades to find real solutions to homelessness to help get people out of their situations and into a home. Here in the county, over the last several years, the rate of homelessness has been relatively stable, although we did see a slight increase, about 3% here in Fairfax County this past year, which is roughly about like 30 to 40 people more during what we do every January is something called the point in time count, which is designated by the Department of Housing and Urban Development for every community known as a continuum of care to go out and to do a one night or a couple day census of those who are accessing emergency shelter or those who are living in an unsheltered environment outdoors or in a place not meant for habitation. The Office of Preventing Homelessness, over kind of a longer period of time, we've actually seen dramatic reductions of homelessness here in Fairfax County. But in many ways, we are right now at kind of a critical point in that with a lot of the things that have gone on in our region with the reduction of the federal workforce, the most recent shutdowns, all of these different benefits that are being challenged and that are funded by the federal government, homelessness isn't one of those things that happens instantaneously. People are very resourceful, and that is a huge approach that we take through all of our contracted providers, is to use a strength-based person approach to understand that person is going to have a unique solution to their household getting out of homelessness. But a lot of these resources that have been present and have been reliably available, there's a lot of questions of those. Are they going to be there? Am I going to qualify? Because it's also changing eligibility, it's changing who can access those resources. And so we are really at a critical moment. And as Jill said, we just got this recent release from HUD, not only in the programmatic side, but there's a lot of challenges into the way of like, this is actually what homelessness looks like. So it's even moving the definition of who is homeless or who can qualify for homelessness services. And it's moving several decades of progress and saying, if we look at people and understanding that they have probably experienced trauma in their lifetime, and as a result of that trauma, they've tried to survive and to manage those experiences, but maybe there's been some development of mental health. Maybe they've they've leaned to substance use to manage that trauma. Now we're going to say you need to go into treatment. You have to do this first in order to be deemed qualified to access housing. And so the federal administration, which has often set the precedent for how we move forward in ending homelessness nationally, but also helping to resource local communities, is saying that's all changing. We're actually going to reduce the number of households that can access permanent housing, which is, would you say 3,200 people potentially losing their housing. There's not going to be a resource on the backside. And so we're really looking at what does that look like in our community. Regardless, our Board of Supervisors continues to support the work of ending homelessness here in Fairfax County through a very compassionate approach, understanding that people have experienced hardship, and there is going to take multiple ways to help solve that. It's not a failure of people. People experience hardships. It's a systemic, all these systems coming together, everything that we're talking about all come together. And in the video, it talked about, I paid this, and what I had left over, I was able to pay the rent. And we do find that over and over again because there are protections for tenants. And so they can push that off a little bit over time. But once it gets to that point, that is often a catastrophic impact with the loss of housing as well as that debt that is accumulated. And so we continue to look at those strategies to prevent the experience of homelessness. That is the most affordable and economical way to be able to keep homelessness from occurring in our communities. But then how do we work to rapidly solve homelessness when it does happen for a household, whether that is an individual or a household with children?
Thank you, Sean. Clearly, these household traumas have a huge impact on families, but especially on children, and that impacts their education. To talk a little bit about that and the impact on children's education, we have Candace Hunstad, who's the Executive Director of Strategy and Planning for Fairfax County Public Schools. Candace?
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I want to say I'm a Restonian, and I care very deeply about this community and this work. My father was a former Cornerstones board member, and I'm really happy to be here. When we heard from all the other panelists, you heard how, I'm sure you can imagine how it's affecting children right now. And so what that reality usually looks like in a school is schools and children coming to school dysregulated. So teachers and counselors needing to spend more time on the social and emotional impact of what's going on in our outside environment before they can get to learning. You know, when you think about the hierarchy of needs and what children need, they need to feel safe first before they can learn. And so we advocate that you continue to speak to all the things that we have access to, the community service boards who help us provide mental health counseling for our students outside of school. Sometimes what we do is we find pockets of the day where students can get online and access mental health counseling as well. We also provide mental health counseling virtually for our middle and our high school students. One of the schools that is experiencing the most mobility is an elementary school in Herndon Elementary. It's Coates Elementary, has one of the highest mobility rates in the county because of a lack of housing and housing instability. And so we continue to want to work with our partners as well because we know the upheaval a student feels when they're constantly having to move. In my former life, I was principal of Herndon Elementary, and I saw that we were losing students because they were moving to Winchester or moving to West Virginia or moving to other different Herndon schools and coming back to Herndon Elementary. So again, the housing insecurity and also wondering about who's gonna be home. So that was something else that I would like to lift up is the childcare and students not knowing who's going to be home when they get off the bus. Is there going to be someone to meet them? What that looks like for them on a day-to-day basis is also a constant stressor for our students. And of course, to talk about basic needs, our students come to school hungry. Earlier this year, we had a freeze on our title money. This is money we get from the federal government to help feed our students who qualify based on income. And so we just want you to continue to lift up that our students need access to food. I was lucky enough when I was at Herndon to partner with Pastor Stephen, and we were able to give out weekend food bags, and there was never enough. Our students come to school hungry, they're aware of the need, and our teachers and Fairfax County goes out of their way. The last thing I would leave you with is the availability of pre-K. What we found over our strategic goal reports, no matter what the metric is, students who had quality preschool are outperforming those students who did not have access to it on almost every measure. So our graduation rates, so they're graduating high school at higher rates. They're getting into Algebra 1 in 8th grade at higher rates. They're reading on grade level by 3rd grade at higher rates. So access to more income-based slots and availability of pre-K. We'd love to have more pre-K in our schools, but we know we need the funding for that as well. We also know that, I don't know if you've been reading, but that the Virginia Department of Education is also trying to raise the SOL cut scores. SOL stands for Standards of Learning. It's a one-time test that students take at the end of the year. They changed the standards last year to raise the rigor and make the test harder, and now they also want to make the pass rate higher. Why this is important is a number of reasons. Number one, students need certain SOLs to graduate high school. So you can imagine if the test gets higher, what that's going to do to our graduation rate. Also, the way that they're holding schools able or accountable for this work is with a 4-year graduation rate. Our students with special needs, our students who are multilingual learners are federally, legally guaranteed to stay in high school for 6 years. But VDOE says we want to rate you on 4 years. So our students who need more time, it makes it look like schools are not doing as well as they need to because they might have more students who are multilingual learners or more students who are students with disabilities. And it's also, again, the rate of graduation is going to be impacted as well. If the test gets harder, the cut score, which you used to be able to get a 400 and pass, next year they're proposing other things. We're very concerned about what this is going to do to public education and how it will make our school system look.
Thank you, Candace. Well, we're running a little behind, but I want to give you each just 1 minute, and I'm going to watch 1 minute, to address the question of how can the faith community and other community partners help in addressing some of the problems that is in your scope of expertise. We're just going to go down the line. We're going to start with Candace, who already talked about one partnership that she has with the faith community, but why don't you go ahead, Candace?
Yes, I would say please talk to your local political leaders, tell them to keep funding public education. Fairfax County Public Schools is a wonderful school system, not just because I'm a graduate, but it's a wonderful school system, and we want our children to be able to thrive. We also think of small things you can do, which is volunteering your time at your neighborhood elementary, middle, or high school. And then also, when you think about the things that schools are able to give, and I'm just going to talk as a former principal, we were able to spend money on goldfish and snacks. But what about the child who had an accident during the day and having extra clothes? And so a lot of schools have Amazon wish lists. They need clothes, they need new packages of underwear, they need socks, they need shoes. Lots of community partners give us coats and backpacks, and we usually had that in abundance, but we didn't have hats and we didn't have mittens. So some of those basic necessities that think a little bit outside of the box is another great way for you to support your local public school.
Excellent. Sean?
I think one of the things I always tell my kid is you only know what you know. And I think that, especially right now, homelessness, there's a lot of different pieces of information, disinformation, a lot of narratives. And so I always say, always go to work to understand the issues. And so organizations like the National Alliance to End Homelessness and the Corporation for Supportive Housing are great resources that are looking at the issues, not just at the policy side, but just also like what is homelessness? What are some of the challenges of affordability as well? I also think getting involved with your local nonprofits and supporting causes with that. I always love talking to the individuals that are not necessarily like serving the meal or handing out something, but the individuals that are going and sitting with people, because relational poverty is another key indicator about the experience of homelessness when you lose your social networks. And so I think it also helps to understand what people need. And so I'm just thinking about, I was at an event at Hunter Woods, and I see the pastor sitting here in the front, and that was just a great example of how it created a forum for people to talk about what they actually need. We can believe what we think people need, but to actually know really makes a difference, and that's really getting involved with the local nonprofits are really key.
Lorena?
Thank you. And, I'm an immigrant kid. I was born in Ecuador, came when I was 8. I'm a product of Fairfax County Public Schools, and I was so blessed to have community that would look after me when my mom was at her second job. I was so blessed to have wonderful teachers. And I think what we need right now is to show up for our neighbors, to have safe spaces where we can hold family preparedness clinics so that we can support families in putting together their emergency packet. Also thinking through, a neighbor was telling me, she's like, sure, I can put an emergency plan together, but I don't know a U.S. citizen ally, or I don't have a family member that has documents that could be my standby guardian. So how are we going to address that barrier? I think we also need to look at, I'm so grateful that Fairfax County has the Immigrant Support Network, where we meet once a month and talk about the different services, activities coming up. But I think we also need to be holding more rapid response trainings, learning from what our neighbors are doing in Montgomery County with the Montgomery County Immigrant Rights Collective. They've really organized themselves in a great way where when somebody's detained and it's reported, there's immediate triage of support. Food trains or grocery delivery, medicine delivery, taking care of elders that are also being left to care for themselves right now. So I think it's really about having safe spaces where we can organize, where we can show up for our neighbors and be prepared for the worst. Chicago has a great example where volunteers pick up the kids on the way to school that have to walk to school because the parents are too afraid to walk the kids to school. They're called the walking school bus. So communities are organizing nationwide, and that gives me a glimmer of hope because things are so daunting and so severe, but yet our allies are showing up and using their privilege and their platform to protect our kids and protect our families.
Jill?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, sorry. I guess I encourage faith communities and partners to use your voice. Our elected officials are listening. They are in an incredibly difficult time frame and period where they're going to have to make hard decisions, but they do want to hear from you. Your connections to those with lived experience, allow you to come and explain what you're seeing in your faith communities, as I know you're doing so many great programs and the work on the ground that you're able to kind of lift up those messages too. Whether that's at the local level, state level, and the federal level. Don't assume somebody else is doing it. Don't assume just because your elected official might represent the party of your choosing that they don't need that education and understanding of what's happening on the ground. And I think something that unifies all of us here that I really want to stress, because we are in a position where a lot of different people are hurting, and maybe some for the first time, but I think it's really important that we stress to our elected leaders that we need to use our resources to help people who are the most vulnerable in our communities, whether it's the pre-K funding for children who won't have that access, or homeless, or those who have deep affordable housing needs in our community, our immigrant partners, and those who are on lower income scales to have access to the food. I think it's a time where we could be pitting ourselves to one another, but I think as faith communities, that does unite you in your work and helping to serve the most vulnerable. So thank you.
And finally, Kelly.
All right. So I'm going to try to do a good job of keeping this concise. Advocacy, food stamp, supplemental nutrition program, SNAP, they're under threat. Under H.R. 1, over 51,000 households in our region are going to lose access to SNAP. And so we need to protect that access, that choice, dignity, access to food is essential to our community. So from a state level, we can advocate for that, but as well as a federal level. It's particularly damaging because of, in Northern Virginia, because of our refugee population. Refugees are no longer going to have access to SNAP benefits anymore, and that as the region that has the highest refugee population of Afghanis, that is really scary for that community amongst all the other things that they are going through. So that's and universal school meals, always want to plug those. So for like almost every faith community has a pantry of some kind. So including Flores, they're one of our amazing partners with the food bank and Cornerstones, and I'm sure half of the audience is partnered with the food bank. Making your pantry accessible, so hours of operation, often they're all take place in the middle of the day, And that does serve a certain community, but evenings and weekends are what make the access, as well as language access, are two key things that you can make to make your pantry more accessible to the community. And finally, no one said it yet, but support financially organizations at the food bank. And I love a canned good drive as much as the next person, but the impact that bulk buying like the food bank, but also Cornerstones with their Hunger Free Center, the capacity that we can have with those financial donations is 10x what you can buy at Giant. So don't sleep on that. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Kelly, and thank to all 5 of our panelists for their... We appreciate the hearing from the experts, but now it's your turn. We want to give you an opportunity to reflect on what you heard, talk about the emerging needs that you see and trends that you see in your community, what's missing from the conversations, and what are some of the challenges and gaps you see. Now, the people who are getting up and leaving, they're not leaving. They're our facilitators, and they're getting ready, and they're going to their facilitation tables. So don't assume people are leaving. So we're going to be breaking up into discussion circles where we're going to have a facilitator and a note taker so we can freely talk about these challenges together. All of our experts will also be participating. The number you pulled out of the little bin is the group that you're going to go to, and the facilitator will be holding up a number. A couple of ground rules. You're all grown-ups here, but just a couple of reminders. Be present, share the space, give others time to share and say things, listen with intention to others, and work together to create something and ideas as a group. After our discussions, we're going to have a chance to share a couple of highlights, 1 or 2 highlights from each group. So I'm going to give you a 5-minute warning, and at that 5-minute warning point, that's when you got to figure out the 1 or 2 sentences you want to share with the rest of us. And this is a way of forcing a prioritization as a group at the end. So we're going to be, Flores United Methodist Church is a beautiful space. They've given us the use of their sanctuary, and we're going to be using their fellowship hall for our discussions. So if you go out those doors and head to the left, you'll see the fellowship hall, and after that, there'll be a chance to mingle and socialize after the discussions are over. So if you can all just stand up now and head to the fellowship hall, left out the doors, and look for your number. Thank you all.